And for those of you who don't speak Spanish, ya basta means enough. And it's enough. And women like Annabella and all these women that are here, that are from the janitorial industry, the farm worker women that are here, are creating change in their industries. They're not waiting for us, but they do need our support, they need our backing, they need our allyship. But they are the solution to the problems and the challenges of sexual abuse within their industry. We know it happens everywhere. We know it exists within every industry, but they are taking charge and creating the change in there and transformation with the industry. Great. Now, I would like to just make a couple of remarks as we listen to Annabella and as we are going to now have our next plenary speaker, just to talk a little bit about the theme of our conference. As you know, our conference theme is Bold Moves, Ending Sexual Violence in One Generation. Those of us working directly with survivors and are dedicating our lives to preventing sexual harassment, abuse, or assault are very familiar with the difficulty in getting folks to talk about these abuses, much less make a commitment to being a part of the solution. The question that we have asked ourselves during the planning of this conference is, what is it going to take to end sexual violence? We believe that the answer to the question lies with the plenary speakers and the workshops being offered here at NSAC 28. We have assembled a great, amazing group of speakers, individuals who are doing important work at the local level. Many have not previously had national exposure, and yet their work is insightful and their approaches are bold. This year, the movement to end sexual violence is 47 years old. For many of us, this has been our life's work. This week, we have the opportunity to reassess our approaches and consider how we need to be, what we need to be, and who we need to be in the next 50 years. We believe that the new approaches require us to look at social inequities. We need to look at how these inequities disproportionately impact certain communities, people of color, persons with disabilities, LGBTQ, transgender individuals, immigrants, those who are undocumented, and others who society often overlooks and forgets. We believe that we need to acknowledge that these inequities are upheld by systematic, institutional, and interpersonal oppression of which sexual violence is a result. We must move away from being siloed and narrowly focused and embrace strategies that consider the whole person. We cannot be effective if our focus is to end sexual violence. Instead, we must consider the complexities in people's lives and consider how multiple social injustices come together to create an environment which allows sexual harassment, abuse, and assault to exist. We believe that sexual violence is preventable, and yet we live in a world in which systematic oppression and sexual abuse is normalized. How can we end the abuse if we don't recognize how these issues are interconnected? We don't believe that we can. We believe that we can. We also know that criminalization will not end sexual violence. We cannot put those who have caused sexual harm away on an island or treat them as pariahs, because we know that many will re-enter and come back into our communities. We must instead recognize that in treatment and rehabilitation is a part of prevention, preventing subsequent perpetration. We need to take a comprehensive approach to prevention, one which includes shifting culture and preventing violence before it starts. We must also include potential victims in that, bystanders, and those who have caused or are at risk to cause harm. We know that many survivors have grown up in homes with substance abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, poverty, fear of deportation, and many other experiences. Some have experienced one of these, some have experienced all. So how can we expect them to look just at the sexual abuse? We need to work with the whole person, and to do so, we have to deploy non-traditional strategies. Our moves have to be bold. Now let's talk for a minute about the conference tagline, ending sexual violence in one generation. Is that an impossible goal? Depending upon what Google search you do, a generation can be 30 years, 50 years, maybe even 100. Can we actually end sexual abuse in that time? I don't know. I don't know that, but we have an opportunity to pivot and to do so now. Our approach needs to address the layers upon layers of oppression. It needs to consider how social inequities and oppression intersect to put some individuals at higher risk, to make others invisible and others disposable. As someone who has spent over 30 years working in the movement, I know that we cannot end sexual violence by being siloed. Our solutions need to recognize how other forms of injustices intersect with one another to create the conditions that allow sexual violence to exist. Most importantly, there is an urgency for us to start now. We need to change the direction in which we are steering the ship, and we need to begin it today. So our tagline is less about if we'll achieve ending sexual violence in one generation and more about recognizing what it's going to take, making a commitment, and taking action now. Not tomorrow, not next year. It's about creating an urgency for each of us to transform our approaches and to do that today. We also need to work intergenerationally. The stories from our past are essential to our work and to ensuring that we don't inadvertently repeat our mistakes. We can acknowledge our history and allow it to inform how we move forward. We need to embrace our millennials and our Generation Zs. They'll likely be the generations that will end sexual violence. Can I hear from all the millennials and Generation Zs in the room? Can I hear from y'all? They're going to be the ones. So as I am prepared now to bring up our next speaker, who we've all been waiting to hear, I ask that you listen carefully to not only Tarana, but also to the amazing group of plenary and workshop speakers that we have here this week, who are helping to transform their industries and our movement, and that have a vision. They are taking bold moves, so we need to join them in that boldness.